So I guess the question is then, how long does
Tane
the
Danger
Democratic
is kind
race
of the Charlie Rose for the theater and public policy improv comedy group that he and Brandon Boat launched several years back. Bob Meek is a Minnesota-based political consultant and observer. They have some thoughts on the question, what the heck is happening?
Are we in a post-policy, post-truth era? Back during Barack's honeymoon period, people said we were post-partisan. That went away pretty soon. But has Trump taken us into politics that can hardly be recognized?
As someone who will graduate this Sunday from the Humphrey School of Public Affairs, God, I hope that we aren't in a post-policy world. The last 2 years of my life would be completely useless. I may as well have gone to house painting school. I don't know. I mean, this is the election. If there was ever an election to decide that question, would be you love Hillary Clinton or hate Hillary Clinton. Nobody would deny that she doesn't have a long list of specific policy proposals and understanding that are articulatable and analyses on, versus Trump, who has whatever he woke up with that morning. I'm not dissuading that simply because it's ridiculous, because I think that there are actually people who that speaks to them. That I think that George Bush, maybe in some ways, George W. Bush led the way on that and saying, I follow my gut on things like that. I worry about that. Even if Trump is defeated this fall, that he sort of lowers the bar far enough in terms of policy, rhetoric, and discourse that it's something that we don't sort of come back from very easily. That we just get used to things being conversations about people's hand sizes or other sizes, and that's okay. Without being partisan, if I were a Republican, I would be even more upset about that, because my party was the one that was leading the fight for bringing the bar down that low. I think that it's really bad for us as a democracy generally.
Minnesota pioneered politainment with Jesse Ventura. What has that taught us about a Trump presidency?
Well, I know a lot of folks actually who were in and around government during the Jesse era, and I think that it's a fascinating case study. You can tell that I go to the Humphrey School because I use the words case study. In that everyone says Jesse did this wonderful job of surrounding himself with brilliant people and actually listening to them. Jesse would come into a meeting and get a half-hour presentation about school funding across the state. And at the end of it, he would ask a very simple question like, but you haven't really talked about how this is affecting kids. What about that? And that would sort of throw policy people like me, for a loop, because we think in data and numbers and things like that. And I think that all of that was really good. People say then that toward the end of his term, Jesse drove off the end of a cliff like Thelma and Louise a little bit.
Look at what they do, not what they say.
And I worry about saying that about him because he will either sue me or find me and wring my neck. But I don't think that Trump has that. Trump doesn't seem like the kind of guy to me who goes into a meeting and says, I don't know something, please educate me about it, and actually has any sort of intellectual curiosity. I think Jesse, at least from people that I've talked to, seem to actually have some intellectual curiosity about things.
This is what I think.
Is Bernie the future of politics, or is this just a temporary phenomenon?
I think that it's not a matter of teaching people, it's a matter of tapping into a moment. So I don't know necessarily, and I wouldn't even be surprised if Bernie Sanders himself said this, that he's not leading necessarily a movement on his own, but he's tapping into something else that's already there. And here in the Twin Cities, we've had a couple of socialist candidates who've gotten pretty far. Wisconsin has had some that actually get elected. I think that what's interesting and will make that work or not is how far that gets as a movement without building more infrastructure. I still think that we are in a democratic system that requires some amount of infrastructure, and thus far, folks like Sanders and some other folks haven't taken the time to build a party out of that in the same way that these other folks have. And it's worked extremely well this cycle. If you don't have someone with the charisma and the passion that Bernie Sanders has next time around, do you get as far, and I don't know.
Maybe if you're the Green Party.
Maybe. I grew up in Florida in 2000, and so I apologize, everyone, about those hanging chads. That was my fault. I was supposed to get those, and I didn't. But next time, it'll be better. As we said at the top, Donald Trump wrapped the Republican nomination up much faster. How did that happen to Republicans? Republicans, that old line, Democrats fall in love, Republicans fall in line. Not this year. Was it that, Reince Priebus was asleep at the wheel with the RNC, or was it that Donald Trump was just that good of a candidate? I'm really honestly trying to figure out how this happened.
I think it came just because they're bored by losing. And the idea that Barack Obama could defeat John McCain never crossed their minds. And then I can go every 2 years since then. And so they finally got the Tea Party people in there. Well, Trump has figured out how to make Tea Party a little more amusing. And in the end, he's trying to promise that I may not be a candidate you agree with on everything, but I'm the one who can beat the Democrat, and that's what your nominees have not been able to do.
The other piece of this, is it actually Republicans that he's convincing of that? Or is it that he's bringing in different folks who maybe weren't part of anything yet?
It's the exit polls and some of the polling on people who go to his rallies and such. 60 to 70% believe that the president is a Kenyan. 60+%
we should just point, and that is not true, correct? I just want to...
Yeah, that goes in the not true category. 60+% want the Confederate flag back. 60+% think that marriage equality is the greatest abomination that's ever occurred.
Are they married? Because maybe they speak from experience.
Yeah, people are for marriage equality as long as it doesn't apply to them. But I think he has attracted a lot of people who would not be acceptable at a Jeb Bush, George H.W. Bush rally. He has opened the door. They wouldn't even be acceptable at a Barry Goldwater rally. Barry Goldwater had people that were with him against the Civil Rights Act.
I mean, Barry Goldwater only talked about nuking Vietnam, not Europe.
Yep. By the time Barry Goldwater retired, he was so far to the left of Donald Trump it couldn't be believed.
So Donald Trump is the nominee. Are Democrats happy about that? Should they be happy about that?
I went through the Reagan-Carter election. I was a campaign manager here. I know that people were just, Democrats, they couldn't have been happier than to have Ronald Reagan to run against. He had the trees cause the most pollution, and you couldn't elect bedtime for Bonzo. No one could take that seriously. Jesus. All of a sudden, Carter, who had been very popular until the kidnapping of the people and hostages, until that occurred, Reagan wouldn't have won. But once Carter was in a box where people wanted an alternative, Ronald Reagan was more than electable.
You heard it here first. Donald Trump is the new Ronald Reagan, according to our guest. So thank you so much for being on Democratic Visions. Please come on again. I'm sure you'll have a better host next time.
I doubt that's possible. Are the tickets free for your improv?
They are not free. I need to make a living, and by a living I mean not starve to death.
So you're not totally Bernie Sanders.
I'm not totally anybody. I am not that. I'm not that much of a cynic or an idealist. I have to, I'm still hoping to get Hillary Clinton on our show at the Bryant Lake Bowl in Minneapolis. So I can't declare for one candidate or another.
If she gets elected.
Well, sure. Or before then, that could be where they have the Trump-Hillary debate is at the Bryant Lake Bowl. It's a beautiful place. You can order food and drink from your seats. What more do you want?
Well, that's it. That's all for now. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next time.
Democratic Visions is independently crafted by volunteers, mostly Democrats, from Eden Prairie, Minnetonka, Edina, and Bloomington.